That you're with us today. We're going to talk about how to flip the script again today. And I just learned that only moments ago, President Trump has been listening to our class because he said something in his speech yesterday about flipping the script. So there you go, Mr. President. Appreciate you being here today. All right, last week, we've been talking about different things that affect us in this life and how we are to try to look at it in a different light, to be able to flip the script on what is happening around us, because sometimes we don't do that. We look at things and we're overwhelmed by them, and we just feel that there's no way out sometimes in this regard. So last week, so far we've talked about infirmity or sickness and how we can flip the script on that. We talked about failure and how we can flip the script on that. And last week we talked about loneliness and how we might flip the script on that. I suggested to you 4 different points last week regarding loneliness. It may help you focus your interest. It may give you time for personal reflection when you don't have the crowd and so on around you. It may bring about an absence of strife. Sometimes, as we looked at in the Proverbs, that a house full of feasting, when there is strife, it's better off to just be out in the desert somewhere or the corner of a rooftop. And it can be an opportunity to build community. If you're lonely, it may give you an opportunity to try to connect with other people and make connections with other people around you. But the last point that I made last week, and I again want to emphasize this, that if you're a Christian, you are never truly alone. You're never alone. The Lord is always there for you. The Lord is always there with you. And so that's what we talked about last week. This morning we're going to talk about how to flip the script on the subject of temptation. And so we're going to ask you to bow with us for a word of prayer. We'll get started today. Our Father, we're bowing in your presence this day. We are certainly mindful, as we have been singing this weekend, of your goodness that is overwhelming to us. It is beyond our understanding, beyond the ability of us to comprehend just how good, how kind, how benevolent, how gracious you are. And you've taken thought of us even when we've taken no thought of you. And you've shown us an amazing abundance of care and goodness. You have provided for us so many wonderful things, and it is with that grateful heart that we come together this morning for our worship and for our study to say thank you. That seems so trivial or small, but to say thank you and to praise you for who you are and for what you've done in our lives. Father, help us to be more effective in reaching to those who are around us. We know that there are people we work with, people we live nearby, people in our own families sometimes who are experiencing an emptiness in their life. Help us to show in our living that Jesus lives in us and how that can change everything, and help us to be bold enough to reach out to them and to share your word. Thank you for being with us today. We ask you to bless our study. Help us to see the wonderful things you have in store for us in your word, and help us to be benefited by our time together. We're asking this all in Jesus' name, and amen. All right, so, there's a proliferation a number of years ago started of reality TV, which many times is not real or reality at all. But there is within some of those shows that were put together a thrill for the idea of temptation and what might be in front of them, the excitement of the seduction of the program, whatever it might be. The explosion or the popularity of reality television speaks to what is oftentimes a lure of sexual attraction in our world today, and the mystique of of who will do what with whom. And so you had the bachelor or the bachelorette, you had different things that were brought on to try to tantalize or what's this person going to do? What are they willing to give into? Uh, but Christians should avoid temptation. It shouldn't be something that we readily sign on for or are intrigued by. In fact, in Jesus' model prayer in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 13, he simply said this, "And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." Jesus recognized the power of temptation and what it can do to us, what it can do to your soul, what it can do to my soul. And he said that when we pray, we ought to pray that God leads us not into temptation, leads us away from temptation, so that I don't have that moment. I don't have to face what am I going to do in this situation? How will I respond in that? So, how often do you pray that God will keep you from temptation? I mean, is that something that's regularly in your prayer life, or is that something that you just kind of, oops, now I'm in this bad spot. Lord, help me get out of this spot. Um, it's something that we need to pray for, pray fervently for. God, you'll lead me away from temptation, that I won't be put in that situation. So let's just start out with this. Let me ask you this morning: why should temptation be avoided? Why is that something we need to have up a red flag, a warning light that's blinking over top of us and telling us why should we try to avoid temptation? Okay, all right. Because of past history, we know, and hopefully we can learn from that. What else can you think of why we should avoid temptation? We're not always strong. Okay, in a given moment, it may be a situation where now I'm oh no, and I'm in that situation that I'm not as strong as I would have been or could have been or should have been. Um, what else can you think of? Okay, sure. Okay, all right. Yeah, Steve. Same thing, absolutely, yeah, and to ask for God's help in that regard. Okay, let me just give you the most. Yes, go ahead, Edwin. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, and I mean that's the most fundamental point, and that's really what I wanted you to think about. Why should I avoid temptation? Because it leads to sin. Okay, I mean, and what does sin lead to? Sin leads to hell. So I mean, just from a very foundational, fundamental standpoint, I should try to avoid temptation if at all possible, because that's going to put me in a situation where now if I sin, now I've given in to Satan, I've given in to his schemes, and now I put that sin on myself. Now I have to answer to God for that sin. I mean, the reality of it is that simple. So let me invite you to turn to James chapter 1. This is a passage I know that's familiar to many of you because many of you are good Bible students. Um, as I say that, I'm looking for the book of James in front of Hebrews, and that doesn't work that way. So, James chapter 1. That means James is after Hebrews. See, and I was thinking it was before. Sorry. Okay. James chapter 1, beginning looking at verse 12. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial. But once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. No one is to say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, and he himself does not tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is carried away and is enticed by his own lust. Then when lust is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it runs its course, brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers and sisters. So what James is telling us is that we need to be careful. There are 2 points to make from this. Number one, temptation leads us to sin, which leads to death, which leads to an eternity in hell. And number two, God does not tempt anyone. He couldn't and he wouldn't, because it is absolutely out of his character and it's opposed to everything that God is. So sometimes people will be in a situation where they're tempted by something and they'll say, why God, why? Well, that's not why God. It should be why Satan, why? Why am I in this situation? It's not that God put you there. And so what are some practical steps? Let's just think very practically before we even try to flip the script on this. What are some practical steps to avoid temptation? I just gave you one, first of all, and that is pray. Okay, Jesus said, pray that you enter not into temptation. All right, go ahead. Okay. Okay. So to try to be a student of who I am myself, so if I know this is a particular temptation for me to try to avoid whatever triggers it might be that set that up. Okay, yes. Okay. So putting myself in a good situation or better situation so that those who are surrounding me, friends, acquaintances, the places I'm in a more positive environment than I am in a negative environment. If this is going to lead me down that wrong road, even as Gwen said, I might avoid going, okay, I'm going to avoid going into the liquor store because alcohol is a temptation to me. But on a positive side, let me be around those people who are going to be a positive influence, help me and encourage me to stay in that way. Jerry? Okay. Okay, to be able to shift gears then. Yeah, go ahead, Dane. Okay, yeah, and find the good that is in the world that's agreeable with what God, rather than to go down those wrong roads and find those. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jerry made a point, and I thought it was interesting. He said that our minds are always going. They're on something, and I think that's true. And yet, I was just thinking as he said that, I think I've met some people who their mind doesn't go at all. You're wondering if you can't jumpstart it, occasionally, get something going or some thought. But you're right in the sense of how we think, how our lives or our thoughts go, tends to be how our life goes and how our life patterns go. So we have to be very vigilant about that. Um, so the idea of resisting the devil and he will flee from you, that is I have to put up strong barriers. And James chapter uh, verse 7 talks about that. To resist the devil, he will flee. As we said, know what your triggers are. Build your own personal holiness. Associate with or be in the company of those people who are good and can help you set you on a right pattern. So let's talk about flipping the script now. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of different things, and really I should change the order on this, but we'll get to it in just a moment. So the first thing I want to suggest to you, if we're going to flip the script on temptation, and this is a very hard concept to get, okay? But I want you to think of the fact that if you're tempted, it could be that God is proud of you. And that God is looking at you and saying, they can handle it. This is my son, this is my daughter, they can handle it. Now, I'm not suggesting that God's tempting you, that He's putting the temptation in front of you. But I want you to look with me in the book of Job, back in the Old Testament. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of the book of Job, beginning at verse 1. Job chapter 1 and verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to the Satan, "From where do you come?" And the Satan answered the Lord and said, "From roaming about on the earth and walking around on it." The Lord said to the Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil." Then the Satan answered and said to the Lord, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a fence around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But reach out with your hand now and touch all that he has, and he'll certainly curse you to your face." Then the Lord said to the Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not reach out and put your hand on him." So the Satan departed from the presence of the Lord. Okay, a couple of things to point out. Number one, this appears to be the Satan having to give answer for what he's doing, where he's been, what his life has been, or where he's been at. And so God says, "So where have you been? What have you been doing?" He said, "I've been going all over the earth, been looking for somebody. I've been going to and fro all over the earth looking for someone." Looking for someone what? Well, obviously by God's answer. I'm looking for somebody who will turn their back on you, somebody who will renounce you, somebody who will curse you to your face, God. And God, almost in fatherly pride, it seems to me, and I struggle with this, almost in fatherly pride, God is the one who brings up Job. Notice the Satan doesn't bring up Job. God brings up Job, the name of Job. And he says, God says, "Have you thought about my servant Job? There's nobody like him on the earth. He's an upright man. He's this. Lists all these great qualities of God, of Job." And what does the Satan say? "Well, you put a fence around. You protected him. That's the only reason that he serves you. That's the only reason he's doing what you... But if you'll take that fence down and you'll touch his life, he'll curse you to your face." What is Satan what is the Satan trying to do? Number one. Well, not Jesus, but he's trying to get God. He's trying to tempt God. Well, yes, I guess in answer to your question, he's trying to tempt God to do evil. Okay, if you'll reach out and touch him, what will he do? He'll curse you. Okay, so does God take the bait? No. What does God say? What? Yeah, he said, "You do it." That's right. Okay, you go ahead and do it. Okay, so God doesn't tempt anybody. I mean, that verifies the point we made before back in James chapter 1. So the Satan says, if you'll do this, this is what he'll do. God says, in essence, I'm not going to do it, but he's in your hand to do whatever. Okay, but what? Don't touch him. Okay, now turn to the second chapter. Look at verse 1. Again, there was a day, because Job responds very well. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves to the Lord, and the Satan also came among them and presented himself to the Lord. And the Lord said to the Satan, "Where have you come from?" Then the Satan answered and said to the Lord, "From roaming to and fro on the earth and walking around on it." Sounds pretty familiar, right? God says to him again, "Have you considered my servant Job?" God brings up Job's name again. It's almost as if God, and as I said, in fatherly pride says, there's nobody like this man. Here is Job, okay? So have you considered Job? For there's no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God, turning away from evil. And he still holds his integrity, although you incited him against me to ruin him without cause. So even in the midst of all of that happened in chapter 1, Job still holds on to his integrity, still holds on to his faith, still loves God, still serves God. The Satan answered and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he'll give for his life. However, if you'll reach out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, he will curse you to your face. So the Lord said to the Satan, okay, I will do it. No, he didn't say that, did he? No, God's not going to be tempted by evil himself. Okay. The Lord said unto the Satan, behold, he is in your power, only spare his life. You can't kill him, but you can inflict him with pain or whatever it is. So the Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, struck Job with severe boils from the sole of his foot to the top of his head. It was so bad, Job broke a piece of pottery and just scraped his flesh to try to relieve some of the pain and the itching and burning that he was experiencing. And Job's wife comes along and says, why don't you just curse God and die? Get it over with. And Job responds to her that she's acting as one of the foolish women of the world. But how does Job do? How does he do? He pass the test? Yeah, he passes the test. He will not curse God. He will not turn his back on God. So when you face temptation in your life, it may be that God is proud of you. And that you're experiencing a situation because God says, you know what? I think he can handle it. I think she can handle it. I believe she's one of mine. I believe he's one of mine, and he will not curse. He will not turn his back on me. He will not turn away. And there appears to be this idea. God is the one who brings up Job's name, not the Satan. It is as if God puffs out his chest and says, have you looked at my son, Job? There's no one like him on the earth. Maybe God has so much confidence in you that he knows that you can handle it, and you have the opportunity to make him proud, as it were. It just may be that God is paying you a compliment. So, how does that make you feel? Okay. All right. Jenny says, yeah, problems make us stronger, but I wish God didn't think I was this strong. What do you think about this? Yes, sir. Right? Yeah. But I mean, Job comes out victorious, and it's because of his confidence. I mean, I have to say, first of all, I don't put myself on any plane near where Job is. Okay? But this is kind of a scary interpretation of this passage to me. To think that God would say, hey, how about Jody? Throw whatever you got at him. He's one of mine. He's going to hold on. He won't turn his back on me. That terrifies me to some extent. Now, again, I'm not trying to put myself in his shoes and say that I'm as good as Job. I'm nowhere near that. But I guess a more personal question would be, would God or could God be proud of you and make that same kind of statement about you? Would he be able to look at you and say, she's one of mine? Yeah. Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Did I see? Did I see your hand up? Melissa says, no, that wasn't my hand up. Okay. She's going to crawl under the pew now. Okay, so Steve. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm just asking what your thought. Yeah, what are your thoughts on it, Dane? Hmm. Okay, yeah, and I mean that's truly flipping the script. I mean, if we want to talk about rather than God, if God loved me, He wouldn't put this in front of me. No, 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 that's the wrong thought to have altogether. It's not that God is tempting you, but it may be that God has such a high thought and a high regard for you that He's allowing you to face this trial or this temptation in your life because He's saying in and of Himself, I believe in you. I believe you can hold up. I believe you'll stand the test. And I love that picture of God that He would have that kind of confidence in me. That maybe He would look and say, yeah, Jody can handle this. I mean, I've faced some temptations in my life. Have you? Some of you are thinking, no, you have. Okay, Karen? Yeah, you have that possibility. Right. Okay, yeah. That's right. If you overcome it, you have the potential of drawing closer to God. Yes, ma'am. Okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that does help us in the moment. Um, but sometimes there is the thought, and Dane was touching on this a little bit, that God is in some way doing this to me, rather than to say it may be just the exact opposite of that. That God is so proud of you, He has such confidence in you that He is saying, "I believe they can handle it." Okay, and that's really what's said of Job, because God says, "Have you thought about Job?" I mean, I don't want God to know me that well. Okay, I mean, I mean that facetiously. That He would say, "How about Jody?" Okay, I've got enough struggles that I'm dealing with, but that's the point of this. That God, to flip the script on this, it may be God saying, "I believe in you. I'm trusting in you. I have confidence in you." Okay. No, absolutely not. No, I mean, God, in fact, that's what Satan tries to get God to do. And God says, "I'm not going to do that." And He said, "But you can do it." And He allows the Satan to. So, I mean, God's authority, God's realm that He is in control, He allows Satan to have a certain realm of authority or power, in that He says, "You can do what you want the first time, only don't touch it." Okay? Satan can go so far, but he can't go to the point of doing so. Second time he comes around, he said, "Okay, you can touch him, but what? But you can't kill it." Okay, he's given a power to him, or allowing him to have this power, but God's not the one doing it. No, 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 no. God does not tempt anybody. He doesn't inflict any kind of temptation to say, "Let's see if Kay can handle this," and throw something in front of you. God doesn't do that. The Satan does it constantly. What I'm saying is God may allow that to say, "I believe Kay can handle this. I believe she's strong enough to deal with this." Jen. Okay. And sometimes that's a very good question to ask, because it is me. I put myself in this stupid situation and I allowed this to happen and I went here and I did this. I thought that. And sometimes it is that exactly. In fact, most of the time it is that exactly. That's what we've done. Brian. Okay? Okay, exactly. Right. Okay, yeah. I'm just gonna take a venture here and a guess that maybe driving's a little. But I'm gonna be very careful around you, Brian, when I'm driving. But no, I understand what you're saying, and it is understanding these triggers. But I just want you to just try to wrap your mind around this first point, that when you face temptation, it may be that God is proud enough of you to say, "I think you can handle it." Okay, that's flipping the script, is what that is, and it gives us a whole new thought. So, okay, so that's just the path. Number two, it could be a test. Okay, it could be a test that you're going through. Let's go back to all the way back to the book of Exodus. We're going to go back to chapter 16. Exodus 16, verses 4 and 5. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, so that I may test them whether or not they will walk in my instructions. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily." So Moses and Aaron said to all the sons of Israel, "At evening you will know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your grumblings against the Lord, against the Lord, and what are we that you may grumble against us?" And then drop down to verse 19. Moses said, first of all, let me stop there. Okay, so every day as an Israelite, as a Jew, you're to go out and gather enough manna for the day. Okay, you get enough manna that this is what we're going to eat today. Now we know they started complaining about the manna. God gave them meat, so on. But right now, this is the instructions. Okay, you're going to see the glory of God, because when you go out tomorrow morning, there'll be food on the ground. Let's put it that way. Okay, it's going to be food on the ground. You go pick up the food, all that you need for today. And on the sixth day, you're going to gather twice as much. Why? Because on the Sabbath, on Saturday, you don't go out and work. Okay, so you're not going to get. So you need to get twice as much. Now drop down to verse 19, chapter 16, verse 19. Moses said to them, "No one is to leave any of it until morning." But they did not listen to Moses. And some left part of it until morning, and it breeded worms, and it stank, and Moses was angry with them. And they gathered it morning by morning, everyone as much as he would eat. But when the sun became hot, it would melt. Okay, so why did some keep some overnight? Huh? They didn't trust God, okay? What if it doesn't show up tomorrow, okay? What if I walk outside and there is no food on the ground? So I just want to make sure I've got enough. I just want to make sure I got enough for breakfast, okay, or whatever it is, whatever their thinking was. And so they decided to keep some back, keep it over, and what happens? It ruins, okay? God said it was a test that they were going through. Now turn to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 8, Deuteronomy 8. Look at the first two verses and how God again puts them to a test. "All the commandments that I am commanding you today, you shall be careful to do, that you may live and increase and go in and take possession of the land which the Lord swore to give you and your forefathers. And you shall remember all the way which the Lord your God has led you in the wilderness these 40 years, in order to humble you, putting you to the test, to know that was in your heart whether you would keep His commandments or not." God is looking at temptation as a test, okay? There is a sense in which, am I going to follow God? Am I going to trust God? Am I going to do what God says or not? Okay? Turn a little bit later, chapter 13, Deuteronomy 13, verse 1. "If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign and wonder, and the sign and the wonder comes true, of which he spoke unto you, saying, Let's follow other gods whom you have not known, let's serve them. You shall not listen to the words of the prophet or the dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul. You shall follow the Lord your God and fear Him, and you shall keep His commandments and listen to His voice and serve Him. and cling to him. But the prophet or the dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has spoken falsely against the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery, to drive you from the way in which the Lord God has commanded you to walk. So you shall eliminate the evil from among you. So let's just picture this. Now you have a man who comes along, and he's a magician, in that he performs some kind of miracle, quote unquote, some kind of sign in front of you, and you're dazzled. You're amazed by that because of the power that he has. You ever watched any magicians and just wondered, how in the world did they do that? Okay? Yeah, I mean, that's the whole concept of it, right? Magician does something. I mean, he doesn't tell you, by the way, what I'm going to do is you slide a hand, I'm going to put it in my pocket or drop it. You just have to sit and wonder, how in the world did he do this? Okay? And that's the whole mystique behind it. Now, it used to be, and it still is in some countries, people who are able to perform acts of magic are greatly revered as having powers from God. They have powers from some God to be able to do what they do. So let's just say you've got this guy comes along and he performs this sign in front of you, and you're just dazzled, you're amazed by his power, and he says, we should serve the God of whatever, okay, and other than the Lord. And he said, we should serve this God. And you say, with the kind of power he has, he must be right, okay? Now, what God is saying here is it's a test. I did this, or I allowed this to be a test, because I'm telling you right up front not to follow other gods. Now, how did Israel do with this test? They failed it over and over and over again, right? I mean, once and again and again and again, they had false prophets come along and said, oh, God said this, this, and this. And the people said, okay, and they went off and they followed these other gods. So, do you like tests? I never liked to take a test in school. The teacher should have just known good. Jody's an A student, okay? The teacher never did that, okay? There was always a test or more tests that came along to see, and most of us are not desirous of that. Sometimes maybe we are. The show-offs in class, they wanted the test. So, but what's the potential benefit of a test? Okay? And to learn what I don't know, maybe. Okay? Maybe it is that I fall short in this particular area. It can temper steel, just like steel is tempered by putting it to the test. You know that steel gets stronger when they put it to the test and try to bend steel, or they try to do those. That's what makes what you have as tempered steel, that makes it harder. It's gone through a test and it's harder now. We can become benefited by that. I can see my time is running out, so let me move on. Number 3, realize that temptation is common to all. The reason I bring this up is that, to flip the script on this, sometimes we think, as I mentioned earlier, well, why would God do this to me? No. God's not doing it to you, as we pointed out, and you're not being singled out, okay? God is not the one picking on you. It is the Satan who is doing this. And secondly, you are not being singled out, because gazillions of people face the same thing you face every single day. And so, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 12. No temptation has overtaken you except such as common to mankind. Okay? What you face is no different. If you say, well, I am just really tempted by pornography, and I don't have enough power to stand up to it, you're no different. Okay? There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people who face that same temptation. It is common to man. So it's important to understand that. The next one, just to remember that you can win the battle. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, again, verse 13, God is faithful, so He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it. And I think it's important to understand, with the temptation is the avenue out. Sometimes we wait until we've given in to temptation, and now we're looking how to correct this whole mess in our life. And we say, well, there's no good way to get out of this. Well, sometimes there's not a good way. after we've given in. But what this says is, He won't allow you to be tempted by what you're able, but with the temptation. So here's temptation. God immediately gives you an answer or a way out. Okay? It might be that you have to run, like Joseph ran from Potiphar's wife's grip, but God will provide a way, and He will help. He will give you the help that you need. Okay. Some other thought over here. Did I see Richard? No. Okay. All right. Anything on that? So last point. Here's the last point. And this is important. Remember that temptation is not a sin. Temptation isn't the sin. Okay? What is the sin? Giving in to temptation. Okay? So, if somebody is tempted to lie to get out of trouble, and they don't lie, have they done anything wrong? No. So I mean, the temptation, it may have flashed through my mind of, if I just said this, I could get out of this mess. And it would be a lie, but the temptation in and of itself is not the sin. That's very important. Now, how do I know that? Well, Hebrews chapter 4, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize. That's double negative, really it means. We have a high priest who can sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things, just as we are, yet without sin. Who's he talking about? Jesus. Jesus was tempted in every way that we're tempted. Okay? The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. The Satan jumped right on him in the wilderness in Matthew chapter 4 with those three temptations. That's the same way we're tempted today. Jesus was tempted in all of these ways. The Satan said, dangled this out in front of it. If you'll just do this, okay, I'll let everybody fall down and worship you. If you'll do this, and he dangles that bait out in front of him again. But Jesus said every time, it is written, it is written, it is written. He refers to God and refers to His Word. But Jesus was tempted. He was enticed to do wrong. But He didn't give in. Sin is attractive. Okay? I mean, sometimes I know preachers have done a disservice sometimes in painting things in such a way that sometimes people look at sin and they think, well, this can't be sin because what the preacher was talking about was so ugly and heinous, and this is pretty good or attractive. This seems to be what I want to do. I need to understand that sin can be very attractive, and sin can be very inviting, and sin seems so fulfilling, yet every single time the Satan is trying to get me to sidestep God's plan and eventually kill me or take my soul. But see, he doesn't, I mean, if I saw every sin as God sees it, how often would I sin? I wouldn't, or I surely wouldn't nearly as much as I do, okay? I mean, if I really saw sin like God did, then it would be a matter of me saying, I know this is dark, this is ugly, this is demeaning, this is going to ruin me. But what do I see sin at that moment? This is going to be fun. It's going to feel good. I'll like this. I'll be in the company of they'll accept me. Whatever it is that's running through my mind. But see, thankfully, we have a sympathizing older brother, this passage tells us, who has faced every single temptation, and he won. He knows what it's like to be tempted, and he understands, but he is standing right beside you, and he is cheering you on, and he is encouraging you to stand up to temptation and to fight off temptation. So to flip the script on temptation, let's understand all of these things. God could be proud of us. It could be a test. Realize it's common to all. Remember that you can win, and remember that temptation is not sin in and of itself. So, thank you for being here this morning. Hope you got your voices limbered up. We're going to sing some more today.